your job is to be there. I think a lot of people get sidetracked. I'm going to be this famous person, or I am famous and people should pay attention to me. And really, in reality, with everything in life, nobody cares.
Today, Mike Knox with me, and it's time to discuss being a comedian. Mike, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, for my regular watchers, you'll see a familiar face in front of us. I'm not talking about my own, but instead Mike's. Mike was here on a previous episode back in September of 24, where we talked about him as a corrections officer. But today it's going to be a lot more lighthearted as we talk about what it's like to be a comedian. So, Mike, let's talk about you getting started as a comedian. How did you actually start doing that? Did you just one day decide to do an open mic night? How did that work for you?
I think a lot of people start this way. Is people kind of tell you you're funny or you're amusing people. I think a lot of it for me had to do with drinking in college. And then there was a band, and the band said, the lead singer of the band, who looking back was kind of a crazy guy, but he was like, "Hey, I want you to do comedy and open." And I was like, okay. And so one night, which was on Del Playa in Isla Vista, Santa Barbara, California, band had either played or was beginning to play, but the band said, "Hey, get up there and start talking." So I did, like, I was imitating Eddie Murphy doing Bill Cosby. So I had no material, and this seems to work out sometimes when you're first trying it out. The crowd went absolutely nuts, probably because they're all drunk, but it was just it's huge energy and a huge high. And you're like, "Hey, I might want to try this again. It might be fun." So then I did that a couple more times for the band, but then I didn't realize that at the time, but music and comedy don't go together at all. So you don't want to do comedy before a band. And so then I was like a couple times where I was bombing, and I was like, okay, I don't even know what I'm doing. Why did it work great the first time and now it's not working? And then I got married, had a family, my daughter got sick. So I really had to give up the comedy, but I started to do it when I moved back to LA, and just I was like, I'm going to really focus on this. So I took a class, which I always recommend, because there is an order and rules to comedy. And if you kind of go into it blindly, it's going to screw you up. So I started taking classes and really, trying to educate myself on how to do this the right way. So I was going into all the clubs in LA and doing all the open mics. And then I had regular shows, kind of networking and meeting people. And it was going really great. But then my daughter got sick, so I had to stop for a long time. And then life gets in the way, and I had a career in making money, because there's really very hard to make money in comedy. So now that I'm retired, I can now focus on it full time.
You talked about going to classes. Where did you find those? I mean, this might be going back a ways now, but was this like at different colleges, like a community college? Where did you find these classes?
Yeah, I actually it was like a flyer on the ground, because that's how we all communicated, by flyers, for this one that was at the Ice House, and the Ice House was near me in Pasadena, and I just thought I'd like to take one because I have a lot of anxiety. So I want to take one at a comedy club with somebody to know, so at least the surroundings would be familiar. And so that's where I started to do it, was take it at the Ice House in Pasadena.
Okay. Now, are these fairly common nowadays at different comedy clubs where they offer comedic classes?
Yeah, they're pretty much everywhere, which I think is great. It was just harder, especially open mics. At open mics, you can find any open mic that you want just simply on Instagram, which was never there before. So I do think that's great.
So when it comes to the open mics, can you just kind of show up, or do they have, like, I don't want to say like bookings where you have to like check in ahead of time so they know how many people are going to be performing? How does that typically work where you are?
Yeah, it's different. Like, if you want to do like an open mic for the Comedy Store or Hollywood Improv, you do have to go and sign up, and then you wait. So there's a lot of waiting to go. So when you're first starting out, it's exciting, but then as you get older, you're like, I don't want to wait around anymore. Or you sign up to put your name in a bucket, like they'll do the Comedy Store. There's 30, 40 comics, and you might not get picked. So that's very frustrating. But what I like about something like Instagram is you can see the club that you want to go to. You can pay $5 for 5 minutes, $10 for 10 minutes, and you can book your spot, and you can see who else is on there. I think it's very convenient, because to me, I sometimes want to go see other comedians as well when I go do it. So why not do that? And then you're supporting like, people complain about that they have to pay the $5 for it, but you're supporting the place that's letting you go up there, and you're always just working on your material.
That makes sense, kind of refining it and the storytelling of the jokes and everything like that. Now, how about this? What about when I'm sure you cross paths with the same comics from time to time. Do you ever find yourself that, I tend to perform well after going after this person, or if this person is there, like they have a certain the audience will have a certain reaction to them, so I might want to avoid that. Do you find any of that as you are going to different places?
Yes, and I kind of go back and forth. Like I always wanted somebody that would bomb before me so that I could do better. But really, what it is, you want somebody that brings the energy to the crowd. And then the third kind of option really is that you're there to do your job, which is to make these people laugh. So it doesn't matter how, I've been in a bowling alley with one person and that was the bartender. That's your job, is to make that guy laugh. And so I think that that's the way to look at it rather than who's, yeah, it is kind of a competition with everybody, but the person going on before you or after you, I would much rather have the person that's a lot better than me because they're going to make the crowd be like they want to be here. Because you'll go to places sometimes and depending on where you are, especially like if you're in Hollywood where everybody wants to become famous, there's a little animosity. You can kind of feel that energy where the people are they're kind of judging you, and they don't really, unless they've been liquored up all night long, they're, kind of hesitant to laugh sometimes.
So let's stick with that for a second. Do you find that you get a better reaction from people as you are later into the night where people are a little looser? You do, okay.
Yes, and you'll hear that all the time. I just have to embrace, like, you'll hear people that are so mad because they're first, and it's so difficult to be first because everybody's sober. And you'll get up there and you won't have the same laughs that you've gotten 1,000 other times from everybody else. So it can be very hard. But again, you guys got to look at it. A lot of it is I always embrace the silence. You have to go up there thinking that you're doing the best that you can do, and they're just not laughing. It's, kind of look at it like that's their fault, but it can be very hard when you're first.
You kind of mentioned in passing about improv clubs. So are different clubs known for a different type of comedy that you should, if you're not into improv, you should stay away from here, or if you're more of like a prop comic, you should go here. What is that typically like?
If you want to do improv, there's tons of improv places. And I do suggest improv because a lot of comedy is just telling your joke and throwing it away. It's a lot like with acting, which I never knew, which is you'll get onto a set in acting and it'll all be improv. And you had no idea, they had told you that there wasn't going to be any dialogue at all. And you're doing all this dialogue that's all improv. And I think that transforms into comedy. You've always got to be prepared for something to go wrong, some sort of failure, which I used to never do. I used to never embrace failure. I used to be afraid of failure. Now that's what I see in comedy and acting, which is just, it's constant failure. It's constantly, you've just got to let that go. And that was very hard for me coming from a career of 23 years. And then everything's kind of out the door. You go and you do your set and you leave, and there's kind of no in between, there's no after congratulating you. You're just going and doing your craft and leaving and expecting nothing from anybody.
Okay. Now you talked about acting. Have you taken any acting classes, or would you encourage people to do that, or that's not super necessary?
I totally encourage people to do acting, and I hear people, especially that aren't actors, say, "No, you don't need to do an actor," because you look at somebody like Leonardo DiCaprio who says he didn't do anything. Yeah, but he was a child actor, so he's learning from all of those mistakes going along. And I'm just older, doing acting, and then there's all sorts of different acting classes. Which there was one that I took where they're like, "You're a muskrat, you're on the ground," and I was just like, I don't get it. So you've got to find the acting, whatever that tool is that works for you, to be able then to perform that. Because what'll happen, and which happened to me, was that I booked a commercial, like, I got the call back, I did all the work to do it, and then when I got there, there was 3 pages of dialogue which I never even knew was going to be there. And so your just brain just starts to, talk about my anxiety, just starts to break you down. Like you can't be here, you can't do this. And that's really, with acting and comedy, you've got to let all that go. You got to really let your ego go, because you're fighting your ego all the time.
I was talking to Meredith. She's a comedian in New York, and I spoke to her back in May of 24. And one of the questions I asked her, and I'm so glad I'm going to be able to get your perspective on this. One of the things I said to her was that, from her experience, is stand-up comedy a younger person's game? When she's up on stage and an older person comes up, there are people like, what's this old guy doing here, something like that. What is that like from your perspective? Do you get any kind of are people more likely to be belligerent, for lack of better words, for you because of your age, you think? Or no, from your experience, it doesn't really matter?
I think it does matter. There's just ageism, but I just think I'm an old person now, so it's my job to do that. And I look at myself on stage, I don't think that I look old with gray hair, but you just have to win the crowd over, and that's your job to do. And the great thing for me is that I'm not in it to make money. I'm not in it to become famous. I'm just doing it because that's what I want to do. So I'm finally in a place in my life that I'm comfortable. So it's not something I worry about. But I did worry about that when I was definitely in my 20s. But that was me. That was my being neurotic. I was just, I hated everything about what everything that I thought or what I did. And now it's just like, oh, well, there's nothing I can do. We're all facing the same thing, which is death. So, oh, well.
Being in LA, large city, a lot going on. I'm assuming that if you want to perform somewhere on any night, I'm assuming there is something any night, anywhere. Is that okay in your area, you think?
Oh yeah, yeah, and I just think that's kind of the problem is then it's LA, so you got to drive there and you've got to get through the traffic. You really do you have to plan. I got a job Saturday, so I plan to be there. I plan to be there early and to fight traffic, and that's what living in LA is all about, just fighting traffic and getting to that place.
Okay. No, you talked about you showing up for it was a commercial, and you got the 3 pages of dialogue and everything. Something like that. How did you come across that? Do you work with an agent? Was it a friend of a friend? How did you get that opportunity?
So everything's changed now from when you used to have to get an agent and work your way through all that stuff. You can go on Casting Network, you can go on Actors Access, there's lots of different sites and they'll send you all that information. So it's a great time. The other side to it is it's also a horrible time right now because everything's kind of very slow and it would be very hard to make a living out of it. But I'm financially okay, so I can take these jobs that are not a lot of money because that's what it is. They want you to show up, do a lot of work for a minimal amount of money, and I'm okay with that. A lot of people aren't okay with that, but they're sending all that information for, you. I think I pay a little bit for the website itself, but what's great is it's a breakdown of everything, and you can look at it and go, oh, I don't want to do this. This sounds, like something that I really want to do. So, and then you have to know as an actor, for me, like I can play dads, I can play doctors and lawyers. I can't play a high school or college kid anymore. But that's what's great about these casting sites is all that information is sent to you. And then you can do a self tape from home, which I used to have to, like everybody else, you would drive across town and, get a parking ticket and wait hours and never hear anything. So the technology is all there to make it very convenient. And so it's just up to you to do the work, which a lot of people don't want to, they still don't want to do all that work.
Going back to the clubs, again, when I was talking to Meredith, one thing I asked her is I said, when you go to different clubs, is everyone treated equally as far as like getting into them? Now, I know you talked about, $5 for 5 minutes, $10 for 10 minutes, something like that. But from your experience from playing at different clubs, do you ever have like, you need to know the right person to even get them to look at you, to consider you? What's that like where you are?
Yeah, you do. But, you just got to be like the manager, Barry Katz says, you got to be undeniable. You're showing up to all these places. And I just look at it myself, like I'm nobody. I don't intend to be anybody and go up and that's your job is to be there. I think a lot of people get sidetracked and I'm going to be this famous person or I am famous and people should pay attention to me. And really in reality with everything in life, nobody cares. So you have to blow those people away. And there could be other factors that, I think for me, especially like when I doing improv, which I never wanted to do before, again, it's with age. All these improv places want very young people so that they can then get them to do, the end goal is to get you on TV, doing improv on TV. So I'm just kind of aged out of that. But with comedy, you can do anytime, anywhere. There's tons of older comedians, but you will go there and it'll bruise your ego because they'll bump you for somebody that they say, is famous comedian and you've never heard or seen these people before. And that's just the nature of the game.
Mike, one thing I want to ask you, when invariably as a comedian you're gonna get heckled, that's probably a rite of passage almost. Can you think of an example where you were in that situation and completely caught you totally off guard, but you managed to like get out of it okay? Can you recall that example for us?
Oh yeah, and I should say I was always afraid of being heckled. That was my number one thing, and I've never really been heckled. I've only had a very drunk guy that looked like Greg Allman with long blonde hair in the back, and he was just so drunk. And it ate away at me for a long time because he just like shouted out, "I've heard that joke before." And your job again is really to fight. It's like boxing. You're up there, you're fighting those people if they do. The biggest challenge right now is just people are on their phones. You have people that are in the front right there on their phone, talking on their phone. And we're kind of in this world of, you showed up to a comedy club to laugh and you have people that they think that they're there also to make jokes or to, they're the center of attention. So I think society's shifted a little bit where we're kind of self-absorbed in that way. Um, but again, if you're doing your material and your material is working, they came there to laugh, so they're going to laugh. That's the great thing about a comedy place is those people at least know I came here to have fun and laugh, and 99% of those people, that's what they're doing.
I love that. I remember, when I was in college, we would have they'd bring in comedians every Friday night, and that was one of my best memories of college. Yeah, we'll go with that. And I always enjoyed that. You'd roll in at like 7 o'clock. The comedian would do their thing for like an hour, hour and a half, whatever it was, and it would kick off the weekend. And everyone's just in such a great mood after that because it was like you were saying, you're going in there to laugh, have a good time, and get loosened up and everything. It was awesome, awesome, awesome. So let's talk about phones for a second, specifically social media. How important is social media in furthering you as a comedian?
I think it's very important, but I still don't get it. And I still, like I have a pretty good following on TikTok, but I have nothing really on Instagram. But then if I do an audition, a lot of casting wants you to have what they want your Instagram. And, some of that is to see other pictures of you, but also it's to see if you're not nuts. A lot of it is to see if you're just not crazy. So it's here to stay. It's not going to go anywhere. But that's also changed with comedy too, is that you could never be in a comedy place before and be doing comedy on YouTube or some other avenue and have millions of views. Which in acting, one of the best jobs that I got was Elvis impersonator on a show that was 18 million followers. They have their own following base, which is unheard of. So I think we're also at like this kind of like a new vaudeville with podcasting and anything with YouTube is that anybody can create anything now, and that's so great. And you can be you don't have to wait for people anymore. You can do all that stuff yourself, and that's what I think is so great about it. So I think there's more to social media, and it'll be even bigger. I see more like vertical filming, which wasn't there a few years ago. So it's still everybody's still kind of testing the waters for it, and I believe it'll expand more.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I was speaking with a musician the other day, and almost everyone is on an equal playing field, as far as the artists go. We don't need these big corporations like the record labels to really get out there. But the downside is you're competing with all of these other people because we're all playing in the same playground, so to speak. Going back to social media, continuing that for a second. Now you said you do a lot with TikTok, but not Instagram, I think you said, right?
I love Instagram. I seem to be like, I got banned for 2 weeks for putting a heart emoji. So I just like what I said is I can't sometimes figure out what it is. Like there's no instructions really of what people are telling you. And I'll put out I put out a 15-second something like that of Wiener Schnitzel, and I got, 80,000 views or whatever. So I have no idea I couldn't tell you what's going on.
I had a very similar experience. I had one of my Twitter accounts got flagged for possible bot. And it locks me out, I think, for a day. And it said, you got to confirm that you're real and whatever. And again, it's like, I don't know what I did. Like, did I do something? I don't know. So
yeah, with Instagram, I verified myself. I sent in my identification. I'm paying like $14 a month, and then I'm getting constantly blocked for weeks. So I just, stopped paying for it, and now I don't get blocked. So I have no idea. I don't.
So from your experience and from what other people tell you, strictly from a comedic perspective, is one social media platform better than another? Do you get more people on TikTok that are looking for comedy than, say, people on Instagram or YouTube or something like that? What's your experience been as far as personal and like what you've heard?
I just have more fun on TikTok, but I see more, especially in acting, where they want to see the Instagram, and then I see more people that are like, hey, that person's got these millions of followers on Instagram. So I'm just always hearing Instagram rather than TikTok.
Okay.
And also,
Okay.
I've been on YouTube, however, it's been since the beginning of it, and stayed at that same amount of followers. But I also think too, it's a very much of a long game. So you could be doing something for years and years and years, and then suddenly you're getting thousands of followers. So personally, I love YouTube. I just can't figure out how to get more followers for it. So what I usually do myself is I'll do the TikTok and I'll see if that works well. And then I'll put it on Instagram, which it doesn't do anything. And then I'll put it on YouTube, and it'll usually get a couple hundred views, but I'm just going to continue to do it. And also what is great about that is if you're in acting or comedy or whatever, do different characters, or do the, yes, the content needs to be good, but at least you can build up something. Whereas in somebody, you could, use that to say, hey, these are the characters I can do, or hey, this is my comedy. The hard thing about comedy when you're posting it is the big difference between comedy and music is people want to hear your songs over and over again. They don't want to hear your jokes over and over again. So once you post that stuff, it is hard to then redo it over and over again. But if you're using, social media for making characters, or just, like there was, I still can't remember her name, but she started out doing like TikTok or Twitters, which is just imitating her mom. And that ultimately got her an agent. And that ultimately got her, I've seen her many times, which is another great thing that I love about comedy and acting. I love seeing the scenes that I audition for. I love seeing people that I've met there. Love seeing the person got that part. I think that's very important also, is root for all those people, be happy for those people that are succeeding, because it is very exciting to watch somebody go from that social media and now you're seeing them on TV.
Meredith said something very, very similar to that about you kind of all, pat each other on the back, so to speak, and you have well wishes for your fellow comics. I think that's really, really cool. It's an awesome community like that.
And that was, when I started out, it was and you'll see this on, you'll see these horrible negative comments from people. And those are just people that they've never done any of this before, and they never will. They're too afraid to do it. But I will never, if somebody went up there and bombed, I would still tell them, great job, because you went up there on stage, you tried to do this, which millions of people will never try to do it. Same with podcasting. There's millions of people that'll never do podcasting. You hear from people like, oh, there's too many podcasts. There would never be too many podcasts, because it's such a great way to get information out. And that one podcast, I mean, there's so many times where I'm listening to something and I'm like, oh, and that changes my life, and just that perspective.
Mike, unfortunately, I am running a little short on time now. But just like last time, if there was a project that you're working on, a cause you believe in, if you want to talk pretty much about anything, I open the floor up to you.
If you're planning to be an actor or whatever, that was your dream, I would say go follow that dream. Because I just hear so many people that tell you not to do that. They give you the wrong information, which I was told also. But if you want to do acting, comedy, start doing it. Get up there and do it. I think it's great. If you want to follow me, I'm on MikeKnox.com or Mike Knox Comedy on any platform like Instagram, TikTok. Love to talk to everybody.
Mike, that is awesome. I'll make sure I get all those links from you. I'll put them in the show notes, the website, put them in the description, so when everyone is looking for you, they can easily find you. Thank you again for being on Time We Discuss, and we learned what it's like to be a comedian in LA.
Thank you.